parents, so remember them in prayer. I'm sure that's it. Sometimes it's good to just get away.
Daughter does it every time.
Stay up there.
Megan said she was going to go see Robbie down in Columbus this week. Interesting law of entropy. And I said, what in the world is that? It's the second law of thermodynamics. And I got a little clip here that kind of explains it. I don't know if we'll get into the whole thing here. I don't think we'll see the whole clip, but let's see.
We're used to our universe behaving in a certain way. There is a natural progression of events, of causes and effects. Living creatures and physical objects behave according to the laws of motion, quantum mechanics, and relativity. But there is something else at work here too, a natural phenomenon that affects the fate of everything in our universe. We are capable of building amazing and complex structures, but everything that we create eventually decays and falls apart. Living organisms age and deteriorate over time. A man preparing a delicious snack becomes distracted. A glass of milk falls and breaks. We've all seen this before. It's unfortunate, and it leaves a mess that his girlfriend now has to clean up. I mean, that he offers to clean up. But why does this happen? Well, aside from carelessness, that is. Why don't we ever see the opposite? Why don't we ever see shards of broken glass fused together and combine with liquid to create a full, unbroken cup? According to the laws of physics, this is technically possible, but we all know from experience that this isn't the way things work. In fact, every glass cup ever made will ultimately share the same shattery, broken fate, whether it's in a dumpster, recycling plant, or on your kitchen floor. It's the natural way of our universe, and it's all because of something called entropy. Okay, so let's just get right into it. What is entropy?
Well, there are several definitions. I would say that entropy is, first of all, a measure of disorder. It's a measure of how many ways you can reorganize a given system.
The entropy of an ideal gas, for example, can be expressed with this equation, where S equals entropy. Kb is the Boltzmann constant, which is 1.38062 times 10 to the minus 23rd joules per... You know what? Let's just say you're playing a game of pool. A typical game begins with the balls arranged in a highly ordered configuration. This is a low entropy state. As the game begins, however, the balls are quickly scattered. The disorder of the table increases, and so does the number of possible configurations. Therefore, the entropy of the pool table has increased.
Now try to do the opposite. With a single shot, put them back in order.
Let's go to the bar. I'm gonna try that all day.
Might take a while for it.
Yeah. Technically, it's not an impossible task, but it's extremely unlikely and something we probably won't ever see in our lifetime. Well, most of us at least. This natural tendency of entropy to increase over time is described by the second law of thermodynamics.
The second law of thermodynamics will tell you that the entropy of an isolated system cannot decrease as a function of time. So as time goes, it will either remain the same or increase.
A perfect example of this is life. A living organism is a highly ordered, low entropy system. And life, on this planet at least, can pretty much pop up anywhere we look, even from a rough, chaotic environment. But this order does not come without a price. It takes a lot of energy to lower the entropy of a system. In the case of plant life, most of this energy comes from the sun. And the sun is constantly radiating energy into space, increasing the...
We get the idea.
When's the test?
Without an outside energy source, everything in the universe, when left to itself, eventually moves from order to disorder. I asked Kathy if she had some clear glass of some sort. Yeah, I put it in the basement. She said, we don't try to keep glass around here a lot. Which I understand, because it's going to go to the natural way of entropy, which things break. Things break. So I asked Kathy if she could give me some ice it takes a lot of energy to keep ice solid. Left by itself, you can see this nice orderly cube is going into mush, a disorder. Left to itself, things go from order to disorder. Unless there is an outside energy source, according to thermodynamics. An outside energy source. Our cars, isn't that right, Kathy? Entropy. Because Kathy's got, you have some illustration, don't you, Kathy? What happened yesterday? Oh, you want to share? Oh, sure you do. You want to share? You have a story about a car.
I had to go on 2 wedding deliveries yesterday and had to go to Barberton. And on the way to Barberton, I had this, you're driving along and I just felt this little hiccup in my car. And it's like, okay, that was different. And I had another one, and the check engine light came on, and then it started to shake and shudder here and there. And it's like, okay, Lord, get us to the piggery. That's where we're going in Barberton. So we got there, called Mike, and on the way home, we kind of babied it, drove slow, and it just kept shaking more and more and more. And finally, up by Doylestown, I had to pull off the road. I can't drive it anymore. It's just I don't know what's wrong with it, but yeah, it was having an issue. So I made Michael go home.
Of course.
This is glass of milk, eh?
It's actually caused me to the doctor to take.
How many have ever had a new car? A brand new car, or yeah? What do you do at first? I mean, the first you do whatever you can to keep from the first dent, and after the first dent, it goes downhill. That's just that's the way that happens. Our houses left. Let's see, we clean them, we get everything all together. But after a while, what happens? This state of order turns to disorder over time. Our washers and dryers, they're new, they're nice, but eventually they break down, they rust, things happen. Our businesses, unless they are rejuvenated, they go downhill. Grades at school, unless there is energy given, your grades which were once an A, can go to a B and C and all the way down. Our gardens, unless they're taken care of, unless there's energy, it goes the way of the weeds.
That's right.
Our bodies,
Go the way of gravity.
everything goes this way of entropy. If we let it go, what happens? When we're younger, lots of times we can eat whatever we want to, and it doesn't seem to show up on us. But as we get older,
It catches up.
things don't work as they once did. It goes the way of entropy. Without an outside energy source, everything in the universe, when left to itself, eventually moves from order to disorder. Our relationships, unless we invest in them, once a vital relationship. I don't know any couple that walked down the aisle and got married, said, you know, someday I could hardly wait till we get this divorce done. That never happens. But unless things are worked at over time, relationships disintegrate. We got to keep working at them. We got to keep working at them. Now it says an outside energy source. There was a time where I would bring my computer when the battery was great and not have to plug it in. But over time, what happens? The battery degrades because there has to be an outside energy source. This computer can't work by itself. It's plugged in. It takes energy from the plant, but the energy from the plant, they got to get energy from somewhere. There always has to be an outside energy source in order for things to grow and sustain. Our spiritual lives, the same thing. Once a vital walk with Jesus. Once a keen love for God moves to a state of entropy, where eventually, once we had a great relationship, it turns to this mush down at the bottom. And it's just, what happened to it? It takes a lot of energy to make ice and to sustain ice. I was talking to Kathy about it. I said, when that machine, when it's really kicking in, what will happen is, I kind of read about this entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. I said, what will happen is that this heat, I said, that room is going to heat up when that machine is really working well. And she said, absolutely. Because it displaces it somewhere. There's trade-offs. In order to have great relationship with others and God, that means other things have to be let go. And maybe some things in our life need to degrade and just be out of our lives. Churches, once churches that were vital, because churches are what? Are made up of people, are made up of relationships, are made up, and if individuals and relationships and things just go the wrong way, churches disintegrate. I heard a statistic. It's a surprising statistic that 90% of the churches in the United States have plateaued or are declining right now. It takes energy to make things work. It takes effort. Now the question is, why? What kind of effort does it take? And unless God is really in our lives, because He's the outside energy source. I think we all understand that. As the scripture says, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. We can give all sorts of energy. But it's God that has to build a church. God has to build a life. Period of the Judges have this cycle. Israel does evil in God's sight. They turn to idols. What happens? God allows neighboring enemies to attack and overcome Israel. Israel is oppressed and enslaved. Israel cries out to the Lord. God sends a deliverer, and the people repent and turn back to God. The deliverer fights and overcomes the enemy. Israel's delivered. Israel's at peace. Israel then forgets God and goes back into idolatry, and they go back, and this cycle continues and continues and continues. And I see this kind of cycle in some people's lives. They're hot with God. They've gotten desperate with God. God's touched them. They've repented. They've turned back to God. And then we relax. I've been a musician too long to understand that I noticed this when I was playing trumpet in very difficult passages. I would concentrate very hard on the very difficult passages. And my concentration, and I would get the very difficult passages and be able to do them very well. But then you know what happened to the easy passages? At times I would just mess up on the easy because my concentration's not there. And then I'd say, I have to concentrate the whole way through. Because when we relax, entropy comes in. When we sort of say, it's time to coast. Can't think of the guy's name. It's Zig Ziglar. He says, you know you're on the right road if it's uphill all the way. You know you're on the right road if it's uphill all the way. Because let's think about it. If you're coasting, what's happening? You're going downhill, or you're soon going to stop eventually. You can't coast uphill. You can only coast on the level, and then eventually you'll stop, or you coast and you're going downhill. God's not calling us to go down. Typical phrases during this period of the Judges. The Judges are specific books in the Old Testament. Typical phrases during those times where the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. The anger of the Lord then burned against Israel, so he did blank. And they were subject to blank and blank for years. They came underneath the particular enemies for this many years. And then Israel cried out to the Lord, who raised up another deliverer, and there was peace in the land for this many years. And then again Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and it went round and round and round. Oftentimes it starts with a man, a deliverer, and then there becomes a movement, and then there becomes momentum, and then you turn to maintenance, and then it becomes a mortuary, and then there's finally death. And that's what happens unless the eyes are on the vision and everybody catches the vision and everybody has that energy from God. I'd like you to talk with somebody. Reflect on your past. Share how you've seen entropy in your life. How you've seen when you've let things go, how things once were vital had just like all of a sudden disintegrated or degraded. In which areas of this downward spiral of entropy do you lack transformational energy? And what I mean by that is that maybe we will say, I know I need work in this area. I know I would need work in this area. And I know this area needs some work, but you know what? I really don't want to do it. And I lack transformational energy. I don't have the energy to do it. And then we might say, well, then what do you do? Because those are great questions. What kind of energy do you have? Do you have energy to change? And if you don't have energy to change, like there have been times in my life where I really don't want to exercise, and I don't like exercise, and I don't want to exercise. That's not a period in my life at this point. How does a person change? How does a person go to actually want and have the energy to do something you really don't want to do? So, let's break out into smaller groups. Let's talk about it.